far beyond the laws of chance.
Despite the fact that Marjorie Fish tried thousands of different combinations of stars to try to match Betty's pattern, she was able to find one and only one pattern that matched angle for angle, line length for line length, what Betty had drawn. The star pattern makes sense from nearest star to nearest star to nearest star. The sun is part of the pattern. Quite remarkably, every one of the stars in the pattern is the right kind for planets and life. And all of the right kind of stars for planets and life in this volume of space are part of the pattern. The chance of that happening by accident, all the right kind and only the right kind for pattern stars, is 1 in several thousand. Perhaps most remarkably, this work tells us where one set of visitors originates. The base stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 reticuli, are a very special pair of stars.
Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 reticuli are the closest to each other pair of stars suitable for planets and life in our entire neighborhood. Instead of being isolated from their neighbors as we are, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 are 100 times closer to each other than we are to our nearest neighbor. It would not be surprising if space travel developed earlier between such close neighbors. Zeta 1 and 2 reticuli are over 1 billion years older than Earth, clearly giving any beings living there a long evolutionary head start on us. We went to Ohio State University to get an expert opinion about the validity of Marjorie Fish's star map work. Professor Walter Mitchell has been a professional astronomer for over 20 years.
It took me quite a long time to gain a full appreciation for the work of Marjorie Fish, but it's become apparent over the years that, first of all, the work is, without question, accurate.
The proven validity of her star map enormously increases the credibility of the remainder of Mrs. Hill's story.
I was taken into the first room, Barney into the second room, where we were given, as the leader, as I call him, gave us testing. There were 11 beings, and for purposes of identification, I called one the leader, because he seemed to be in charge of the project of doing this testing, and he was the only one who spoke English. Then there was the examiner who did the testing, and then there were 9 others we called crew members. They stayed outside the room in the corridor. Our examinations were very much similar in that with both Barney and I, they checked our eyes, ears, nose, throat, took samples of our hair, fingernail, and they scraped our skin. With me, they touched my body with little points on wires. He said he was checking my nervous system. And then they attempted to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel. I objected that it would hurt, and he said it shouldn't hurt. When he did this, it caused a great deal of pain. He said it was a pregnancy test, and I said, well, that's no pregnancy test here.
Betty Hill was right. In 1961, there was no pregnancy test like that here on Earth. But in the early 1970s, 2 techniques, amniocentesis and laparoscopy, have both come into wide usage. Both are techniques that provide information about pregnancy and bear a striking resemblance to the experience that Betty Hill described. It's difficult to imagine Betty Hill inventing medical techniques that did not yet exist on Earth unless her UFO experience actually occurred. When the alien leader saw the pain that Betty was experiencing, he put his hand on her head and the pain went away.
At this point, the examiner came running back into the room and opened my mouth and started tugging at my teeth. And I said to the leader, what is he doing? And he said, we're very, very puzzled. Why are Barney's teeth removable and yours are not? At that point, we left the craft and went back to the car, and we stood there by the car and we watched the craft leave. We saw it become surrounded by a fiery, revolving mass of some kind. We could see the UFO in the middle of this. And it lifted up, dipped down, went right straight up, and was gone. I received a copy of the radar report from Pease Air Force Base, where they had tracked an unidentified craft at 2:14 a.m. Just about the time we estimate that the UFO left. We went back and we found the spot where we were captured. It was not a fantasy. It was a real experience. And I believe that I have enough evidence to establish that.
I first met Betty and Barney Hill in November 1968. I've spent a great deal of time since then investigating their abduction. I've talked to Dr. Benjamin Simon about his hypnosis sessions. I've listened to the tapes of those sessions, and I've looked at Marjorie Fish's star map work in great depth. It seems clear to me that Betty and Barney Hill were taken on board a flying saucer in New Hampshire in 1961. This story must be taken at face value. It's true.